and welcome to the Christmas special episode of Music Works, the podcast by Polyphony Arts. We are live today for our first ever live episode, and exceptionally prepared, as I'm sure you will all be able to tell. So first of all, what we've got coming up today is a set of messages and conversations between the guests that we've had in series 1. Where I wanted to start was to bring on the Polyphony Arts team. Now we actually have a new member of the team since we recorded the first episode with the team back in September. So let me welcome the team. We have Susie Murray, Graziana Presicce and Margaret Pinder.
Hello,
Hi everyone.
Hello. Hey there.
So nice to have you all on the podcast.
Yeah.
So, isn't it? So, what I thought we would, what I'd like to give to our listeners is some kind of thoughts on 2020, 2021, this festive season perhaps, or just sort of where we're at the moment. As we all know, it's been a hell of a year, and we've through this podcast and through our live series that we held on Facebook before we launched the podcast over the summer, we've been talking to various people in the professional music industry and trying to kind of get a sense of how everyone's doing, what the changes are that we're seeing in the industry, how we can operate positively and do good things to make things better, either directly to do with the pandemic or in general. So I would love to hear from each of you your thoughts on that, on any aspect of that you'd like to contribute to. So why don't we start with Margaret?
Well, I think one of the big things, obviously, we can all rehearse the awful things that have happened this year and what they've meant for live music and for musicians. But the last podcast we did was talking to Rafael Morales of the Fidelio Orchestral Cafe. And one of the things he said was COVID has also given us opportunities. And one opportunity we've taken, and which is one that was not constrained by COVID and might actually have been inspired by COVID, was to start this podcast. And I think that's been a huge positive achievement this year, where there's so much that we've lost and that we've been sort of grieving after. We've started this wonderful podcast, and I, for one, have loved every minute of it. I think it's been, credit to you, Katie, for the fabulous guests you've had on, and we're going to be talking to some of them later, which is very exciting. And I actually learned how to get the whole podcast online. Virtual concert halls have been brilliant in supporting us with the recording and the tech, and I, in spite of having virtually grown up with quill pens and slates, have actually had to learn new tech and how to get the podcast online and get it distributed and get the episodes out there. So for me, that's actually been a massive win. So I want to say something positive, and that is Music Works. That's been what's been really great for me this year.
Oh, thanks, Margaret. And it's been great for me as well. But I think your work has been really behind the scenes, and can't actually
for a change
express not at all, can't actually express how much
as you can see I'm very as you can see I'm very generally modest and retiring, she said, indicating a huge gold wreath on her head. Yes, thank you.
Kind of important to recognise the people who generally lurk behind the scenes and
yes. Bit of a lurker.
No, but really it has been an enormous learning curve, and I can't tell you the number of times I've been incredibly grateful that you know things that I don't have to, so that's always a joy, always a positive. And Susie, welcome to the team.
Thank you. Lovely to be on the team.
This is Susie's first appearance on the podcast because she wasn't a part of the Polyphony Arts team at the time that we recorded the team episode, which is the very first one. But really, really glad to have you part of it now. So, yes.
Well, yes, delighted to be here. Thank you so much for letting me join the team. Real pleasure to be with you. And yes, I want to continue on from Margaret's positive point, because I think it is so easy in a year like this to focus on the negatives, and obviously there are just so many terrible things that have happened, but you have to look for the silver linings, definitely, in times of adversity. And one's definitely that obviously I've had a slight change in working situation this year, but it's meant that I've got to join you guys, which has been really wonderful. And You're all amazing, and the artists are awesome too, so thank you so much for letting me join. But I think other positives we can definitely take from it are I mean, I know this is probably a strong one to make, but that being less complacent. I mean, you know, we did have it really good before the pandemic came. And I think it's definitely realigned for a lot of people what's important in their lives, who's important, you know, really reaching out to old friends and maybe family who you don't keep up with as regularly. We've all pulled together this year, and definitely that has been a lovely positive. But I think it's also speeding up progress, if I could go on a kind of broader tangent, just because I think the home working revolution, or for example, I'm based in London and you guys are based up north, and yet here we are all working really well. We've proved that we can do it. We have the technology, and this pandemic has basically forced us to use the technology. And I think that's great. I mean, hopefully, I mean, as an employer, that allows you to hire people who aren't necessarily going to be able to make it into the office. But as an employee, it also means that I can work for companies who aren't commutable. So I think that's really wonderful. And I mean, environmentally, obviously, a lot of our artists and ourselves travel for work. I mean, I know it's a nightmare because obviously with music, people need to continue to travel around. And that is something that's going to hopefully get better as this vaccination's rolled out. But I think a lot of people have been environmentally minded over the last few years. And it is positive this year that people are perhaps stepping back a bit from going on holiday every month or other things, not necessarily work connected. But traveling around the UK more, I know. So again, I think that's a positive step in that direction. And then innovation. I mean, like you say, this podcast has come along, which has been brilliant. But also, I think, you know, the last crash in 2008, that's when Airbnb and Uber were founded. And I think people come up with great business ideas and overcome things in really innovative ways in times of adversity as well. So I think we will also have some wonderful things coming out from that side.
I agree completely. And the virtual concert halls who are supporting this podcast are a great example of innovation that's come out of the pandemic. Just one of many. Oh, thank you. That's great to hear. Completely agree with all of it. Graziana, over to you.
Yes, well, I completely agree with everything that's been said, and I think this time really encouraged to think creatively, which is why we're probably never been so connected as now, and reaching out to people that, as it's been said, we perhaps didn't reach out to before, or trying to get together when we can't physically, but at least virtually. And it's very nice to see how many new projects started during this time. And speaking about nice things, I have a little surprise. I don't know if it's ready. I'm sorry, this is more of a visual surprise, so it might not work. So for anyone listening, it's my dog. And he has a bandana with written "naughty nice" or "I tried," and "I tried" is ticked. So I think that applies to all of us. I think be kinder to yourself if this time has been so difficult. So it doesn't matter how productive you feel you have been, or how much progress maybe things have been cancelled. It's been really difficult for all artists, but as long as we keep trying, and it's going to be fine, things will work out.
Oh, I love that, Graziana.
That's really nice.
Brilliant message. And there is no more positive thing to think of at the end of 2020 than your dog.
Of course.
Thank you so much, Polyphony Arts team, for coming on and sharing your thoughts. We're now going to change the guests around and introduce two guests that have been on the podcast over the series we've just done. So if we can change over, that would be great. Thank you so much. Just let me shuffle. Hello, welcome. We're now introducing Naomi Pohl, Deputy General Secretary of the Musicians Union, and the film and TV composer Jarman-Pinto. Welcome.
Hi. Thanks.
Oh, Margaret was here too, but she's gone now. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming on. So if you've just watched the the conversation we just had with the team, you'll see the sort of things we're talking about. Ella, would you like to start? Give us your take on things going into the new year.
Yeah, I have to say also I really enjoyed Margaret's crown. I thought she was absolutely magnificent in that. But yeah, I think I mean, there's been a lot of positivity for me in 2020, but it's also been one of the hardest years, and I think there's that balance, isn't it? There's that balance between, like, you know, having to overcome all of these multitude of obstacles that we're experiencing, and also just taking the time to just, yeah, it was horrible, you know, like, you know, that kind of thing of, actually, yes, things do move on, and yes, we do innovate, but I think we need to take that time to just accept that, oh, it's such a hard year. And from that, then we can kind of move forwards. And so that's what I'm doing today. That's where I am today, which is probably why I'm coming out. Maybe ask me, like, in 2 days' time and be like, yeah, it's great. But no,
I'm
I think...
totally with you, yeah.
Yeah, I think what I have learned is of the kindness and the community spirit, and people who have really, really worked hard to ensure that other people are safe, and, you know, and people have pivoted, and people have followed all the different rules, and they've also had to do what, you know, they also had to do what suits them for that moment as well, mental health wise or illness wise, and people have lost loved ones, and people have really cheered on others who have managed to make things work. And I just feel like it's a really wonderful way of realizing that we are all connected, and we do rely on each other, and we do value each other as people and humanity. And, like, you know, a lot of people are saying, you know, a lot of memes going around going, can we just skip 2020? We'd like to pretend it never existed. And for me, I think, no, it definitely happened, and I want it as part of my life, because then I can look back at it and go, I got through that. And I got through that with better friends than I started out with. Yeah.
Oh, I agree completely. It's been a big concern for me, actually, organising this podcast. I didn't want to come across as one of those people who was like, everything's absolutely fine, and here's how we can all put loads of energy in, and then we'll be even better than we were before. And it's like, you know, so many days for all of us, it would just be like, oh God. But, you know, getting dressed is going to be the pinnacle of my achievements today.
Yeah. It's like,
so it's been, yeah. I think I'm glad you said that, Ella, because it's like striking that balance between not, you know, I couldn't stand at the beginning. I haven't seen this for a while, to be fair, but all the people who were sort of learning Japanese and developing their trapeze artist skills whilst at home, I found that a bit challenging personally. Naomi, let me bring you into this. What are your thoughts?
Well, it has been a year unlike any other, and I think my job has completely changed. So obviously, you know, working from home and just being on Zoom kind of 8 or 9 hours a day. But oddly, I do feel like I've connected with people in the industry and at work more in some ways. So I manage our regional offices around the UK, and I think we've been in the past fairly London-centric organisation, but I feel like I've seen my colleagues around the UK much more often, and that's been really positive. And looking into next year, obviously it's been incredibly grim, and it continues to be really grim in the industry. Last night I was talking to some of the West End producers who were obviously completely gutted that those of them who'd actually managed to get some stuff up and running for Christmas have had to pull shows again, and it's heartbreaking for everybody. But on the horizon, we can see potentially a vaccine, potentially you know, getting some live shows up and running again next summer. And so I think all of this has lasted a lot longer than we expected, but we can see now coming out the other side potentially, and maybe getting the festivals on next summer, maybe having some, you know, many more indoor concerts and events and productions. So something to look forward to. And what an amazing image to show us coming out of the crisis, to have people kind of, you know, at gigs, dancing together, close together, you know, without socially distancing. And I know we all can't wait, and we're probably going to enjoy it more than ever before as a result of this year.
Definitely. I'd be interested to know, I'm always curious to know what people's takeaways about the industry are for, you know, because COVID has really shone a light, as anyone who's listened to this podcast will know my opinion on this, it's really shone a light on existing problems within the industry. And I'd love to know your opinion, Naomi, from your position in seeing so much of the industry from the Musicians Union perspective, on the lessons that we as people within the industry, or that the industry itself, should learn from COVID, and should, you know, the ways in which it could be better in the future that have really been highlighted.
Yeah, well, I think we've realised that musicians need a safety net, because there wasn't a safety net, and obviously various organisations have acted really quickly to get together hardship funds. But the fact is that musicians a lot of the time don't have savings, don't necessarily have pensions. So, you know, you just rely on that freelance work continuing to come in, and then suddenly it doesn't. And the government support has been good for a lot of musicians, but there's obviously been the gaps in the schemes. So some of our members have been literally struggling to feed their families, and people who in normal times have got really healthy careers and are very busy and have, you know, decent salaries coming in. So it's been completely horrifying. So I definitely think that's something we're going to be looking at in the future. How can we put a safety net in place so that if something like this happens again, our members are prepared? The other thing I know I came on and talked about a while back was the streaming royalties issue, that we've kind of identified that recorded music doesn't do enough to sustain the careers of songwriters and performers. So that's another area where maybe there's a glimmer of hope, because a select committee are actually running an inquiry into the economics of music streaming, and we can see that next year maybe we might get some improvements there. So again, that would help if we ever find ourselves in this position again, to actually have some better royalties coming in for musicians.
Yeah, it sounds as though it's that understanding of the different component parts that make up a freelance career. And I think in a world where people understand employed life more in general, it can be hard to realise how much is missing from, as you say, in terms of pension security nets and so on and so forth, from building that freelance career. Yeah, well, I share your hopes there, definitely. Ella, do you want to give some thoughts on this from the freelance composer perspective? I haven't prepared you for this question, sorry.
It's all right. But I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting in that we have been one of those kind of lucky in some way, in that we were already, you know, we had very low outgoings. My husband was studying, so we were actually benefiting from universal credit before all of this stuff blew up, so we weren't in that queue. And also, as a composer, I didn't need to go out and perform to earn. And I'm not saying that work has been coming I mean, I've been busy, but you know, we haven't been, you know, we've been on one income. So in terms of, reason why I put that out there is because actually it has been really enlightening for me to experience life on universal credit, trying to build my business, and then find, you know, and also, and actually the SICE grants as well, but also see how the SICE grants totally destroy the universal credit, and it means we don't have any of that support. And then, you know, it's getting to that end of that year where we are struggling, and we struggle towards the end of every month. And I have never been in that position before, and we have always been low income. You know, we're musicians, we're used to low income, we're used to scrabbling here and there. You know, I grew up in that kind of household, so it's not new to me. But not knowing how to do Christmas, or not knowing how I'm necessarily going to pay all of the bills this month before the next thing comes in, that is new. And I feel like that's really important for me to learn, because there are so many people who this is their everyday life without COVID. And often those people are the people who are the key workers. They're the people who are keeping us going. They're the people in the supermarkets. They're the nurses who don't get paid enough for what they do. They're the teachers who put in, 30 extra hours a week and don't get paid for those hours to kind of make sure our kids are safe. And they're the nursery workers who are very much overlooked. And, and they're the ones that have been brought into the limelight. And I know I'm moving away from musicians here, but what I'm trying to say is that I feel like in some ways it's a bit of an equalizer, because, sometimes when you're a musician, you've come through a family that can afford that kind of tuition for you. You've come through an education that can take you to the limit, take you to places such as a conservatoire, or if you're self-taught, you've had that background that enables you to go, hey, I'm gonna take a risk and be self-employed. And I feel that, actually now we're experiencing in some ways what a lot of people experience day to day. And I think that we can really learn from that. How, especially with how to make the music industry more diverse. And it's not just from the top down, it needs to be from everybody. And if we all learn this and we all know, then we can really make a difference. But yeah, it's been an eye opener. But I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm fine. We'll be fine. But like, it's like, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. That's yeah, really important.
Sorry, I ran down.
No, not at all. No, I'm not quite sure. I mean, I agree, and we've experienced some of that this year as well. Financial challenges that we haven't experienced before, definitely. And I think it's really important for us all to kind of have this in the forefront of our minds in an industry which is quite challenging for people from low-income backgrounds, very challenging for people from low-income backgrounds to enter or to sort of be part of, definitely. Feels kind of tricky to segue from this important topic into bringing on new guests. That's how
segue away.
I will segue. Thank you so much, both of you, for your brilliant thoughts and for coming on and sharing them with us. I will now welcome, I'm going to take a break from the hosting, and I'm going to welcome Margaret back, who is going to talk to Anna Ouspenskaya from Virtual Concert Halls and tenor Austin Gunn. And the crowd, of course.
Yeah.
Hi, Margaret. Good to see
Hi,
you.
Anna. Love to see you again. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, just waiting for Austin to swing in. For those who are waiting, here we are.
Hi,
Welcome.
Austin.
Austin. Oh, you had such a wonderful hat. I feel.
Sorry.
Yeah, you should come on.
There we
Excellent.
There you go. That's beautiful.
Yes. Oh, and it's a Father Christmas hat that waves its hands. That's wonderful. Well, I think we've all been working online to a greater or lesser degree. Anna and her fabulous team at Virtual Concert Halls have been helping with recording the podcast. Anna and I have been co-hosting this incredible online international music competition called Sound Espressivo, and the last session is this weekend. And Austin, what have you been doing online? You've been doing some quite exciting stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of reinvented, because again, we were talking about earlier being new to sort of some digital technology, but I've kind of embraced it as much as I can, and because we had to, I suppose. I've been, this week will be the 34th with my company Rocket Opera online classical karaoke, which is a performance platform open to any performer, whether they're professional or amateur, just to come and share performance, enjoy other people's performance. And it's run without any criticism, anything like that. It's just a safe space for performers to come in and ply their trade in a way, just to have an open sort of practice space to try things out for themselves. We've also been having opera sing-throughs. We just did a Bohème highlights on Tuesday from both Bohèmes, and a little bit of Rent in the end as well to go on the end of it. And so it's been a really different sort of 9 months now, I think, 9 months.
Yeah.
And I've been involved without Rocket Opera. I've been involved also in creating a movie version of A Soldier's Return with Sunderland Opera, which was streamed and has been watched all around the world. And it wouldn't have reached wouldn't have reached the tiny 0 point something % of the people it reached if it was in the theatres in Sunderland. And so it's given us new opportunities to reach different audiences, new audiences, and I think that's my takeaway from so far, because I think we're still going to be doing this for a little bit of time to come, and the platforms that I've been hosting, the performance platforms and the sing-throughs, will go on as long as they're needed by musicians. I'm not going to put an end date on it. We've some of the artists I've never met in person before. We've created links with performers in America, in Tel Aviv. Recently had a baritone join us from New Zealand in the platforms, and so we keep picking up new people. And I think as long as we're providing a service to those people to sort of enjoy performance, and especially performing together, distance accompaniment, distance duets, trios, which we have been championing through the lockdowns and the tier systems. As long as those things keep happening, I think there'll always be a platform for our platforms. Yeah.
I think that's right, because Anna, going to you, I mean, that's exactly kind of encapsulates also what your experience was, wasn't it, Anna? I mean, that's the story in a way behind virtual concert halls. I mean, I was talking about how I had a steep learning curve with the podcast, learning how to actually get the podcast online, broadcast the episodes, link it everywhere. So Anna, a bit of history about virtual concert halls, because that's been, again, an amazing success story this year, and echoing all the things that Austin's just said.
Yeah, it echoes similar approach and similar things we were doing. So we started also about 9 months ago, I want to say. We didn't count the weeks like you did, but we started in April with the lockdown and looking for ways for essentially for students of our own studio to perform the upcoming recital. Was part of our curriculum. So the initial idea was very small. Let's find a way to host that recital. So, and then we did in early May, and then it was a very steep learning curve for all four of us. We're 4 professional musicians, performers and teachers, and we do normal stuff like every accomplished professional musician does. So we learned an enormous amount of technology and how to connect it, how to make better sound, all of that stuff, and of course how to then broadcast the production to different platforms and how to make it known to people, how to invite people. So this whole completely new industry basically. And while learning all of that, we also found that there's a lot of need and interest in this. I think professional musicians pretty much overlooked the internet reach in the previous years, and I believe this pandemic situation, for all the tragic which happened with it, also has some positive which we can make out of it, and that is looking more closely into the online possibilities and basically stepping into this virtual realm and thriving in it, because it can be learned, it can be done, as we found, and it can be very successful. So our crown project is almost finished, like Margaret said, and that was the Sound is Perceived global competition, which attracted people from every part of the world. So we had musicians from Australia, from Hong Kong, from every country in Europe and the United States, Russia, Ukraine, you name it. And that was pretty remarkable to be able to bring so many people together. And we're doing a lot of other programming. This podcast with Polyphony Arts is one of them, and we have some other regular programs which we're doing and presenting musicians and basically creating this community momentum, promoting that yes, musicians can perform online, we can bring in a lot of valuable talks online, we can reach the audience, and we can make new connections through these new systems.
Yeah, because I think, oh, by the way, shout out there for you, Austin, we didn't have enough vocalists in the competition this year. Next year we need more singers. We had some lovely singers, but none of them actually made it right through to the final. So just dropping that out there for you now. But I think, Austin, you're right from what Anna's saying, not to put an end date on it, because I don't think there will be an end date on it. This is a new thing that you know, it had teething. There were lots of problems. Everybody was suddenly doing it. There was endless stuff online, and the quality was a very mixed bag. And you know, there was a lot of, well, people are sort of frowning on it at first as, but actually, it is a hugely important new resource, and it's not going to go away. It's not going to go away at all.
No, and I think it's going to actually grow and expand and reach further and bring more people. Just yesterday, I performed a concert for the same organizer, same group of people as I did back in late April. There was one of the first online concerts I did, and back in late April, they had, I think, 6 people attending. Now, yesterday, the same setting, the same basic community, we had 65 people attending. Now, the community, this is an outreach program which we are supporting, as musicians from the Kennedy Center. And this is, the target audience is people in the retirement age. So these are the people who, at first, everybody was saying, well, we can't bring them online because they just don't know how to use the technology to be able to get online and watch the concerts. And that audience has grown tenfold. And this, to me, is a big sign. And people were completely fluent with all the technology involved. And these were people in their 70s and 80s.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's also the opportunities are still sort of, people are still finding new ways now to engage with the new technology as well. Where I'm currently working on an opera specifically for Zoom, and so it will be designed to work alongside the dashboard we have on Zoom, and so it would never work in real life. This opera, it's created for the platform, and it will live on that platform as long as that platform exists. And I think that's the thing. There's a lot of projects created that would never have existed before the pandemic, and I think that's a good takeaway for us all to diversify like that. And as Graziana was saying earlier, like, we should never punish ourselves for not doing things, but we can look at doing new things. It's my motto through the whole thing has been to do what you can and not dwell on the things that you can't do or what's been cancelled, but look for what we can do, see how we can either make a difference for other musicians or create something for ourselves to perform. And Anna clearly has embraced that herself, and all of us here have done that in different ways.
Yeah. And Austin, I have to pitch in and say I need to put you in touch with the opera company in Washington, D.C. area, Bel Cantanti. We did a program with them maybe a couple of months ago, and they are creating also an online version of the opera. They're doing moving in the exact same direction, very progressive, wonderful people. So let's make sure we put you together and see how maybe you can find some projects you can do together.
That would be wonderful. Yeah,
that would be great. So there we are. That's great. Thank you to you, Anna. Thanks, Austin. Music works, bringing people together across the globe. Thank you, Father Christmas.
Thank you, Margaret.
Lovely. See you this weekend, Anna, for the
this weekend
Gala concert.
Saturday, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, which is the UK 5 p.m. Tea time.
See you then.
Thank you,
Anna. Okay. Right. So handing back to you, Katie.
Thank you. That was great. Right. I would like to introduce our next guests, Alisdair Hogarth and Rebecca Milford. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you so much for joining. Gosh, there's a real great pair of jumper examples here.
We did coordinate, obviously, and think about it for several days to get it just right.
I can tell that you planned it in advance. It's excellent. Well done.
You got to be prepared, don't you?
Yes, indeed. So I'm told. Thank you so much for coming on and for doing the podcast episodes that you did earlier in the season. I thought it would be great to have you on this little segment together, as I know that you know each other and work together in real life. on Zoom. So yeah, tell us your thoughts. Tell us about what you're up to at the moment, and you know, your thoughts on this place that we're in at the moment. Rebecca.
Yeah, I just wrapped up my first term of masters at Guildhall. And it was kind of every week a completely different experience. Some weeks super quiet, and then another week where you'd be very, very much more busy. And I'm going to be doing a few more kind of, hopefully, I mean, we say that I'll be doing some more things in the next term, but like, hopefully I will, which is kind of singing in a French opera at Guildhall for the sax department, which has only got, it's just 5 saxophones and voice, which is like a kind of 1950s French opera by Francais called Paris à nous deux, I think. So I'll send through details of when that, I think that's being streamed on the 20th of January. I'm doing a Russian Czech song project with Lada from Guildhall next term as well. So little things kind of bubbling up project-wise, which is really nice to kind of dive into the music, some music I've never worked on, and really kind of flesh that out. But yeah, I'm kind of looking forward, I think like everybody, to seeing what 2021 will be. Gotten used now to thinking maximum a week ahead and just taking it a day at a time, and trying to let music be as lovely as it can be in my day-to-day life, and have moments where it's just for me to listen to and not for me to practice, basically. Yeah, that's where I'm at the moment. Looking forward to Christmas with my parents, for sure.
Oh yeah, that's lovely. And here's Graziana, who
Hello.
is totally part of this little group as well. Thank you. So sorry, we had a slight. I got confused by the list about who was hosting this bit. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
Lovely. Graziana and Ala also working together. I don't know if you and Rebecca have met or not. Anyway,
no, actually,
over
no.
to you. Sorry, I shall.
Oh, it's Graziana doing the interview.
Oh,
hello. Hi.
okay. Right. This is the nice surprises of working live and excitingly. So tell us what you are working on at the moment.
Me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess I'm doing lots of work on things that are not out yet, for obvious reasons.
Well, no,
but also things that are very specific to the kind of online space. And I actually just caught the end of the previous segment with Austin, and I just couldn't agree more with what he said, which, when he was talking about how it's now the case that a lot of projects are sort of made specifically for the platform. And I've been really excited to see that happening more and more in the music industry in the last couple of months, as people start to sort of, the initial panic in terms of how we create during lockdown is now over. We saw all those amazing kind of performances that came straight away, within days even of the first lockdown happening. But I think now we're seeing, as people are getting used to what is possible, what the platforms are, how they can use the platforms, how they can add to them. I think we're seeing some really interesting projects that are, specifically for those, either just for the online space in general, or for, as Austin was saying, for specific platforms. So the two main, actually, funny enough, one of the projects that I'm still working on was something that was written right back in the, right at the very beginning of the first lockdown, which I think we've talked about. I can't remember which podcast it was, but I have talked about it on here, so I don't want to go on about it. But it was this piece by Stephen Huff, and so we've just actually decided to use it actually more for 2021, because it has a life after it as well. It has a life after lockdown, which I think is quite a nice sentiment too, just to see, what can be created in this period, and also how can it live afterwards as well? Because I think that's important. It's important to see how these things can be used going forwards and be pieces of art that we enjoy in the future too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there are so many also initiatives that maybe started during this time, but we are going to see them flourish in the new year and when things start to get better. So it's nice to see new things happening. And I wanted to ask if you have perhaps what are your wishes for the new year? If some things you're looking forward to, or just some thoughts, Rebecca?
Yeah, I think, like everyone, I think I have a lot of wishes for the new year. One of them is to kind of maintain perspective. I would like, as the year goes by, and hopefully as the year goes by, things will become more, I guess, normal in terms of, things will kind of die down a bit. And when that happens, and when I think inevitably there is a real need for live music that comes back in, I hope that I'm able to keep perspective about like the pace at which I can have a slower pace to be feeling like I'm on top of things and that I'm enjoying what I do and I'm not just like rushing to get everything done. I hope that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
And I also hope that that actually the relationship with technology stays really positive. I think it's such a good point that Al's making, and Austin was making the previous section about online content being like has kind of been trialed and errored the entire year as this happened. And I think there's something to be said about how much wider that audience has managed to be. Like, from a really selfish point of view, I have old members of my family that can no longer travel to come and see me in anything that I perform live. And streaming is such a great way of being able to have people in my life see me perform from not having to travel. And on a wider scale, that means that we're able to say, like, even if you just catch a little bit of this, like maybe tune in and hear 5 minutes of this piece, and then people's like attention's grabbed and they might come back and watch 15 minutes or half an hour or something. And I hope that like wanting there to be a wider audience and include everybody in music just because we love music, I hope that stays.
It's so true. It's totally true. And also it worked out in a similar way from me, because I live in England, but I'm from Italy, and my relatives in Italy never really saw me performing since I was a child. So it was very exciting for them having that opportunity. So it's really true. I hope this will stay. It's important it's such a great tool to use, but as much as live music is essential, it's definitely good to expand the horizon since things is possible. And
I think
what about
sorry. No, I was
go,
say
go,
one
go,
more thing.
Tell me.
Is that off the back of that, I just hope that young musicians like myself or young performers that have maybe aren't on the radar use what they've experienced this year to really be a different generation of performers and use their very unique experience of what it is to be like kind of a nobody in the big ether of musicians to kind of share their like experiences through their art and know that there is a way that everyone can be included through music. I hope that there is there's an exciting thing that might happen. It might take a few years, but I hope that that's the case, definitely.
That's a very good point. And Al, tell us your hopes or things to look forward to in the new year.
My hopes are that this vaccine gets rolled out pretty quick.
Yes, that's all of us.
I think that's my main hope. Hopes. I guess. I think my main hope is that we find a balance in the music industry between. I think there's a danger that we all, as things go back to normal, and hopefully they will start to do that this year, certainly within the music industry and the other arts industries. I really hope that we don't just all go, phew, I'm really glad that digital stuff is over. I can get back to doing live. And, I think it's vital that we have live. And I think that's what our music exists. I wouldn't say it's not necessarily the best, but it's, that's what it's made. That's what it's always been made for up to now. But my main concern is that we learn from all the digital stuff that we've done and invested in, and that we bring that with us too, so that it works alongside the live, and we make sure that we don't just go, phew, bye digital for a bit, because I think classical music was behind the times with digital, and I think it was, I'm not saying it's a good. Of course, I'm not saying the pandemic was good in any way, but it did accelerate certain things digitally in the music industry that needed doing, and you're seeing now like orchestras are really, lots of orchestras were already on digital, but they're really sort of pursuing that angle now, out of necessity at the moment, obviously. But I really hope that all this continues, and those two things, live and digital, run in tandem really nicely together. Because I think the pop industry has managed this very, very well, and I think we haven't done quite so well. So I think that's my hope, is that we step it up and try and be awesome.
Yes, being awesome.
Yeah.
I think we will close on that amazing line. So thank you both very much for joining us today, and it's very nice to see positive hopes for the future, and yes, being more optimistic about the next year. So fingers crossed for this vaccine to get sorted. And
Thanks,
I think I will.
Graziana.
Thank you very much, and I will.
Thank you.
I will ask Katie to join back. There we go.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to hear all of this. I hadn't actually realised how sorry, we're all getting in a muddle over who's meant to be where when. If you're watching this on the audio version, it'll just come out as like lots of chuckling, but on the video version you can see that we're all swapping screens and generally doing very complicated and professional broadcast, which is all down to my excellent planning. So in the next section we have I'm getting heckled in the comments as well, so I'm just going to turn that off. Yay! Here we have Susie, who's going to interview Michael Pohl, Julia Kogan and Tom Appleton. Loosely on the thing that ties you all together is to do with making oneself heard and singing and being part of this performance space. So I shall duck out.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And hopefully Julia Kogan might be joining in a second. I believe she's part of this group, but perhaps we'll start just with the two of us here. Thank you for joining today, guys. Lovely to see you both. And so, yes, we are covering, as you've possibly heard from the other sessions, I don't know how much you caught to them, but thoughts for 2020 and making oneself heard as well as our loose topic. So, Tom, would you like to begin perhaps? Any thoughts for 2020, wishes for the new year and the like?
I mean, wow. Yeah, I took you back to my own mental health in March, and I was struggling, let's be honest with you, and it was a feeling of lack of identity and a feeling of lack of insecurity and financial and artistic and all the rest of it, just thrown up in the air pretty much overnight. And yesterday I did a production of a pantomime called Rapunzel, the lockdown pantomime, and we had 210,000 children singing, dancing and signing along from Aberdeen to the Isle of Wight. So within 9 months we've gone on that journey from absolute disarray through to something I could never have imagined. So, I mean, roller coaster.
Yeah, absolutely. And what an amazing, turning the year around, like you say, something that you wouldn't have necessarily moved online at all had it not been for this time. And I do hope your two halves of your panto horse, I loved hearing that you were going to be part of a socially distanced panto horse. Did that role go well for you?
Well, I actually I spoke to my agent and I said I can't do this, and I actually ended up being in the end I was a pantomime Dane with Brunhilde horns. And,
amazing. Perfectly cast.
I could have done either.
Let's face it. Yes, man of many talents. Lovely. Oh, and Michael, what are your thoughts for 2020? The journey you've come through.
Well, it's as Tom suggested. It's been quite a wild ride for all of us. I did my best to take advantage wherever I could of the newfound time, but the kind of funny and ironic thing is that in some ways the time in the absence of sort of support and sort of the usual amount of artistic stimulation, that can be difficult to leverage. So there was definitely also a time for me in March where I was like, right, this could be tough, but was lucky to kind of turn the corner. I spent some time doing some writing and learning some new repertoire, doing some arranging, and trying to finish up projects that I don't think ever would have been as possible otherwise. And looking towards the future, I've been trying to think about how we can adjust the way in which, especially community music, gets made. So I was lucky a few years ago to make a record of Bach that kind of compelled me to do more playing out in the community as part of thanking the supporters for that project. And I really think that kind of thing is so essential for us as artists, and especially for me as a soloist, that there are things that we can do and people who we can engage to match the supporters who might be here and the infrastructure for this kind of thing which might be over here, and then the people and the audiences that might most benefit from it, so it's kind of this triangle. And I've been enjoying trying to figure out how I might be able to take on that challenge.
Brilliant. It's lovely. I mean, again, fantastic to hear these sort of positive things we've taken on. It's always so easy to focus on the negative and all of the bad things that have happened, but when adversity comes along, you have to focus on what you have gained and what will be positive going forwards. So Tom, back to you. What do you have? I mean, again, at the new year, everything's slightly a state of flux. Things we're trying to program, make things happen. Who knows what will happen with a vaccine? But what do you have coming up or hope to see in the new year?
One thing I've just seen this morning. I live in Suffolk, here in the UK, and one of our local national portfolio organisations is Snape Maltings from the Arts Council, and they just today have released 5 or 6 full-time job adverts, and they're looking for producers and for all sorts of kind of artistic people. They had to make massive cuts, as so many did. And today we just see the first shoots of that big transfer of money that they got from government actually having gone through the cogs of process that they have to go through, and they're now looking to rebuild their staff, which is great news to see that is happening. And equally, I have it on good authority that they're going to be looking at what they can do for freelancers as well as part of that. So I think increasingly in the next week or so, just into the new year, we're going to see some of those big players being able to come out slightly come out the other side of what the decimation that we've seen with sort of full-time joblessness and the like at some of these places. So I think that's really encouraging.
Absolutely.
I think the other thing that I've always known this, but the other thing I've really engaged with this year is the concept of me being a business, and not just from a kind of financial point of view, like what fees do I set, but actually from a kind of structural point of view, and not being afraid to obviously go to the what we call the usual sources in today's world. Rishi Sunak, go to him for some money. Go to the Arts Council for some money. These are fairly obvious places where we can look. But equally, I've just found that we've just been given a £3,000 grant by my local council, which was set up to help businesses, and it's a pot of money that I might not have thought to go to, or in the past, if I was just a performer, then I think of myself as a performer rather than a company or what have you. Yeah. So I'm going to be able to buy a load of new filming equipment and lapel mics and recording gear and stuff like that is just going to really help us going forwards. And I think just having retouched base with other parts of the economic structure has been really interesting.
Fantastic. Oh, again, really wonderful to hear about these positive aspects, and that it will help going into the future. Brilliant. And Michael, so any shoots, I love how you described it there, Tom, any shoots of sort of positivity, things you're seeing in the broader industry, or things for yourself that you see coming up that you think will be exciting in 21?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, as Tom suggested, we are starting to see some of the bigger players kind of stabilize and maybe turn a corner, which I think has a knock-on effect on all of us, and that can't be anything but positive. And I guess the to extrapolate from that it's good news that a relatively high percentage of them have survived, and which was definitely not a foregone conclusion either in April or in August. I mean, and so it seems that, you know, with the advent of the vaccine, we're kind of looking towards a future that will exist, even though I'm finding it hard to, you know, really feel that deeply that, like, yes, I will be back on stage playing for people, because I think that's been one of the hardest things for me, is that even though it's possible to sit and play for a microphone, it's not the same as the energy in the room, but that's coming, and that we can continue to prepare for that and work towards that. And then for me, I think the most exciting thing is the prospect of having the infrastructure built up around, you know, this idea that of time sharing for professional artists between, you know, normal, say, traditional concert gigs, but also, you know, community oriented things that don't rely purely on sort of the philanthropic or altruistic impulses of artists, right? So I think that people need exposure to the art form live and in person, and the artists need to be paid. And so that's really an important thing. And hopefully that if there's something that can be prepared for that future, that might be one of those things.
Absolutely. No, indeed. I couldn't agree more. And especially with the importance of live, it's just so true. And I mean, I obviously mentioned at the start, you know, there's some benefits for the environment and things with people traveling around less, but with performance, no one would ever contest that the live energy you get is the same as what you get online. So I think it's so important, yes, that we have both and we make that happen. But I think that we will.
With community orientation, right, it kind of, you somehow can start to achieve the best of both worlds. So Julia Fisher just came out last week, you know, arguing that orchestras should stop touring essentially, or tour much, much less. Yes. You know, and that there needs to be sort of real local focus for artists. But in order for artists to be able to focus locally, there needs to be infrastructure that supports that.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to have balance in our communities of, you know, what is really the role of these people who live in our communities and also the institutions that support them. And how do we kind of find balance in that way?
Absolutely.
That's really resonating with me. If I may, Susie,
please.
I also, I'm not all about money, but just a further thought. I had my PRS PPL payment into my bank account yesterday for online streaming and broadcasts and whatever. I've spent 10 years with a group who were called the World's Best Choir, singing with the Monteverdi Choir, going all across the world, doing broadcasts and recordings in those 10 years. And my quarterly payment for all of the recordings and broadcasts that I did in those 10 years was £3.69. So, I mean, just extraordinary.
It's exactly.
You know, so online, great, we can work, but we can't live on it.
On £3
as much as, you know, we need it back. We need life back.
No, exactly. But as Naomi said, actually, in an earlier session, it's so wonderful that the government are looking at this now, because the streaming and recording system is completely broken. And there's been some really interesting articles as well written recently about it. And it has to change, because if it's going to, you know, it's got to sustain the artists, and it's ridiculous. I mean, yeah, £3. That's just So there we go. Yeah. Well, anyway.
So that's the future.
Yeah. Exactly. No. Well, hopefully with Katie's podcast and, you know, trying to focus on the change that can happen, we can move things in the right way, and perhaps this will also shone the appropriate light on things for us to help that change come forward. So thank you both so much, Michael and Tom, for coming today. It's been a real pleasure to have you on. I'm wishing you both a Merry Christmas. And I think we'll return to the studio now to catch Katie. Yes. Hello.
Hello. Oh, well, I hadn't realised quite how intense it was going to be to have so many Christmas messages and season and sort of reflections all in one episode. So yeah, I'm quite overwhelmed with the thought of all of this kind of knowledge and expertise and all of these experiences that people have brought together. Thank you so much to you all the guests, for coming on and sharing your views with us, and thank you to all of you for hosting. Some of you were expecting to, some of you were not. That's just how we roll.
Yeah.
And,
brilliant.
Apparently my audio isn't okay, no, that's fine. I was
We can-
criticised.
You sound great. We can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Wonderful.
I can hear.
Okay. So let's round up. I'm saying I'm not quite sure how to round this up, really, having had such a wealth of expertise and experience on. But maybe if we four can come back to a wish for 2021 and a message to our listeners. Who would like to go first?
Well, okay, I'll go first. My wish, yes. Then you guys, that's to buy you guys time to think. Well,
thank you, Margaret.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Margaret's got messages kept in that crown, just like
the messages.
There.
I'm filtering them. This is like actually a phone mast. This crown. I'm actually broadcasting 5G directly through my gold crown. My wish for 2021, and it seems like a personal wish, but it actually is not entirely. My wish is that my orchestra, the Hull Philharmonic, and I'm principal double bass in the Hull Philharmonic, and I'm also chair of the society. I want my orchestra to play again because I miss it so much. And that seems like just a personal wish, but it's not, because if my orchestra can play again, can start playing again, it means that musicians everywhere will be able to start playing again. It won't just be us. So that's my personal wish, because it will show that that's happening. And my message is for everyone out there in the music community is to don't lose hope, keep the music live, keep the sense of the community going, because as we've heard today, we are a fantastic community. Musicians always have been. Music always has been cooperative and collaborative. So keep the faith, keep the love, keep the community, and keep the generosity going, because we will be playing together again.
Absolutely.
Shall I jump in next? Okay, that was beautiful, Margaret. Absolutely, and I think my 2021 wish is that we take what we've learned from this year. It has been pretty brutal by all accounts, and so to learn and grow from where we are, as many of the guests have touched upon, we've got some wonderful technology, we've got some wonderful innovative new ways of presenting music. To keep on using them going forwards. It wasn't just a lifeboat that we'd be using for this year. Let's really use it as a springboard to go onwards and upwards into more exciting things, to learn from the year, and also to be kind to ourselves and congratulate ourselves that we have made it through. I mean, the most ridiculous year in my lifetime. It's absolutely insane, and for many people's lifetimes. So give yourself a pat on the back and think about actually how much you have got through by making it through this year, and it will be onwards and upwards from now on.
Totally agree. There's not much I can add with all these beautiful wishes. I completely agree with all of them. And yes, I think not losing hope and really not to give up, because this is a beautiful industry and we must do everything we can to keep going, and be trying to be more optimistic, and yes, and as you said, Susie, be more kind to ourselves, because it's really been a difficult year. And I personally, my first wish is I miss my country, so I want to visit it as soon as it's possible and safe again. But I'm also really looking forward to some exciting things, which I hope it seems to be lining up musically for me personally in 2021. So I'm really looking forward to those. And just remembering how important it is to stay together and really work together and not against each other, because we are all in the same boat, and that's how things can get stronger and better.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And I'm not sure that my wishes are any more, profound or interesting than anyone else's, but I'll round it off by saying my wish for 2021 is that we get to see who we want to see, and we get more control over the careers we want to have and the lives that we want to have. And my message to listeners is to stay in touch with people, reach out when you need to, let people give you energy and give you support when you need to, and be there for them when they need something in return. And you know,
beautiful.
That's certainly been the thing that's kept me going. Oh, thanks. Right, I think we better round it off and go and have some more sherry. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Thank you for listening to season 1. I can't believe I've made a whole series of a podcast. We have series 2 starting in the new year. The first episode of that will be broadcast in mid-January. So more to come, more great guests to come. Have a wonderful festive period, everyone, however you're able to celebrate it. Thank you.
Yes. Lots of love.
Thank
Goodbye.
you.
Merry Christmas,
Merry
everybody.
Christmas.
And Happy New Year. See
Merry
you in
Christmas.
2021.